The cold had a way of making everything feel sharper. Edges of buildings, cracks in the pavement, even the ache in Thomas Bell's knees. Snow clung to the December air in their small Ohio town like it didn't want to fall, just hang there and make everyone miserable. Thomas was used to it. He had grown up here, raised a son here, and buried a dream or two in the same frozen soil. He tightened his coat and stepped off the porch of the rundown duplex he rented on Maple Street. His boots crunched through a thin layer of ice. His hand instinctively went to the envelope in his pocket. Overdue rent. Inside, his 8-year-old son Caleb was trying to do homework by the pale light of the kitchen bulb. The boy didn't complain much, not since his mother had left 2 years ago. Thomas did his best, working nights at the steel mill and weekends at the auto shop. It barely kept them afloat. But Caleb always waited up for him even when Thomas told him not to. Maybe he knew his father needed someone waiting. The knock came just past 8 p.m. Thomas wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door to find a woman and 4 children standing on the steps. The woman's eyes were red from cold or crying. A baby fussed quietly in her arms. The oldest girl, maybe 12, held a toddler's hand. Another boy, around 6, clung to his mother's coat. "Hi," the woman said softly. I'm sorry to bother you. Pastor Glenn said you might have space. Just for a few nights." Thomas blinked. "Pastor Glenn." She nodded quickly, her breath clouding in the porch light. "The shelter's full. We've been in the church basement, but the pipes froze. He said you used to help families sometimes when there's nowhere else." Thomas looked past them down the street, dark, empty, cold. He wasn't a man who said no to need. He stepped aside. Her name was Rachel. A widow for 9 months. Her husband, Mark, had been a construction foreman, killed in an accident that no insurance policy could fix. After months of couchsurfing, shelters, and government waiting lists, she had run out of options. Her children were tired. She was exhausted. Thomas gave them the second bedroom. He and Caleb doubled up in his room. They shared food. He borrowed a cot from the neighbor. The house was too small for 6 people. But kindness doesn't measure square footage. The first few days passed with quiet awkwardness. Caleb was cautious, unsure how to share his space. Rachel tried to help, cleaning, cooking what little food they had. Her children were polite but jumpy. Trauma has a way of making itself at home. But something subtle began to shift. Rachel sang to the baby at night, soft lullaby tones that filled the cracks in the old walls. The older kids helped Caleb with homework. Thomas came home to laughter again. Tired laughter, but real. He hadn't realized how empty the house had felt until it wasn't anymore. But the town had long memories. Rumors started fast, about Thomas and the widow living under one roof. The landlord knocked twice in 1 week. A supervisor at the mill pulled him aside. "You're not running a boarding house, are you?" the man asked. Thomas bristled. "They're just people. Needing help." "That's not how it looks, Tom." And then the accident at work happened. A press failed. Thomas pushed a coworker out of the way and took the hit. His left arm was crushed. Surgery. Recovery. Weeks without pay. Rachel offered to leave. He told her not to. "We're not charity," she whispered. "I know," he said. "Your family now." Money ran out. Rachel began cleaning homes for cash. Thomas felt humiliated, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. "You helped us when you didn't have to," she said. "Now let me help you." Winter deepened. Pipes froze. Caleb got sick. Rachel's toddler ran a fever. The old space heater sparked and nearly caught fire. But in the middle of it all, they celebrated Caleb's 9th birthday with cupcakes and homemade paper hats. It was the first time he smiled in months. Thomas sat at the table, Rachel across from him. Their hands brushed while clearing plates. She didn't pull away. Neither did he. And then one night there was a knock at the door again. This time it was the man from the mill. The one Thomas had saved. He held an envelope. "Look," he said, uncomfortable. "I know you won't ask, but we took up a collection. You saved my life. It's not much, but..." Thomas opened it later. There was over $1,200 inside. Enough to keep the lights on, the water running, food in the fridge. He wept alone in the kitchen that night. Not for the money, but for the feeling that maybe, just maybe, goodness still came around. The snow finally stopped in late January, but the cold stayed behind, clinging to rooftops and fingertips like a warning. The town thawed slowly, grudgingly, and Thomas Bell learned that healing didn't come all at once. It came in small, invisible increments. A day without pain in his arm, a full night's sleep, Rachel's laugh filling the kitchen like sunlight. Still, the weight of everything lingered. He spent his days in physical therapy, then home again by early afternoon, where Rachel would already be peeling potatoes or folding laundry. The kids had fallen into a rhythm, turning the cramped house into something like a home. Caleb had started calling Rachel Miss Rachel, and sometimes slipped up and called her Mom. Neither of them corrected him. One night, Thomas sat in the living room staring at his hand, still stiff, still weaker than it should be. Rachel came in and sat beside him, the silence between them familiar now, not uncomfortable. "I miss working," he said quietly. Rachel looked at him. "I know. I feel useless." "You're not." She didn't add more. He didn't need to. He looked at her, really looked. Her hair was tied back, hands rough from cleaning, eyes tired but still soft. She had held everything together without asking for praise. Without asking for anything. That night, for the first time, Thomas allowed himself to imagine something more than survival. But life didn't stop testing them. Rachel's youngest, baby June, began having coughing fits. At first it was just in the evenings, but by the second week of February she had trouble breathing through the night. Rachel took her to the free clinic. They gave her antibiotics. It didn't help. One stormy morning, June wheezed so badly Rachel called an ambulance. Thomas rode with her in the front seat, gripping the dashboard like he could hold the world steady. At the hospital they found out it was RSV, a respiratory virus dangerous in infants. The doctor's face was serious. "She needs to stay overnight." Rachel's hands trembled. "But we don't have insurance. We don't even have a real address." The nurse gave her a look, not unkind but tired. "We'll do what we can." Thomas stayed in the hallway while Rachel rocked June in her arms. He watched her sing, watched the way her tears fell without her noticing. And something inside him clicked. He wasn't just helping them. They were helping him back in ways he hadn't even seen. Word of the hospital stay got out. This time the judgment wasn't subtle. At the store, an old woman Thomas had known since childhood muttered under her breath as he passed. At church he noticed people whispering. "She moved in quick, didn't she? 4 kids and no ring? I'd be careful, Tom." The worst came when Caleb came home with bruises on his arm. Thomas knelt beside him. "What happened?" "Tyson at school said I don't have a real family. Said we're dirty and poor. I tried to walk away. He pushed me." Thomas's jaw tightened. That night he stayed up late staring out the window. Was he being selfish? Had he made things harder for them all? Rachel found him at the kitchen table. "If you're second-guessing." "I'm not." His voice was firm. "I'm just trying to figure out how to protect something I care about. Something I love." She was quiet. Then she said almost too softly to hear, "Me too." 1 week later Rachel got a job offer. It was from a woman she cleaned for, a boutique owner in the next town who needed a store assistant. It paid more than cleaning. Regular hours. Benefits. Even childcare during shifts. There was just one problem. It was 30 miles away. They sat at the table again, faces worn, coffee between them. "It's a good opportunity," she said. "We need the money." "But it means you'd be gone more," Thomas said. She nodded. "Maybe it's time." He looked at her and his heart hurt, not from jealousy but fear. Fear of what might break if distance grew between them. "Then I'll drive you," he said. "Every morning. Until I'm back on my feet." "You'd do that?" "I'd do more than that if you'd let me." Rachel smiled, tears in her eyes. "We're not just surviving anymore, are we?" "No," Thomas said. "We're living." And then something unexpected happened. Rachel's husband, Mark, had an old friend named Curtis, a quiet man who lived out of state. One day, a letter arrived in Rachel's name. Inside was a short note. He always talked about what he'd do if something happened to him. "I know he'd want this for you. It's not much, but maybe it's enough to start over." With the note was a cashier's check for $9,000. Rachel sat at the table, silent, staring at it. Thomas stood beside her, unsure what to say. "I could get an apartment," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "You could." But something in his chest twisted. "I could give the kids their own space." "You could," he said again. She looked at him, her voice cracking. But it wouldn't feel like home. He sat down across from her. This place isn't much, Rachel. But it's not just walls and floors anymore. It's people. It's us. She reached for his hand. I don't want to start over, she said. I want to keep going. With you. Spring came late that year. The snow melted slowly, leaving behind puddles and potholes and a kind of weary hope. For Thomas and Rachel, life had found a rhythm. Not easy, not perfect, but steady. Thomas's arm was healing better than expected, and though the mill hadn't offered his job back yet, he was doing light repairs and car work for neighbors. Rachel's new job at the boutique was working out. The drive each morning, just the two of them, had become something sacred. The house was still small, still too loud sometimes, but it pulsed with warmth. Then came the letter. Folded neatly in a plain envelope, it was addressed to Thomas. The landlord's name was stamped in the return corner. Thomas opened it on the porch under a hazy April sky. The house was being sold. They had 30 days to leave. Panic set in fast. Rachel sat on the floor sorting bills while the baby napped. The older kids stayed close, sensing the tension in the walls. We could use the money from Mark's friend, she said. First and last month's rent somewhere. Thomas rubbed his face. Even if we do, finding a place that'll take a blended family, short notice, no formal lease history. He didn't finish. He didn't want to say homeless. Not again. Rachel looked down. We just started feeling safe. I know. Caleb stood in the doorway. Are we gonna lose our family? Thomas crossed the room and pulled him close. Not if I can help it, bud. Thomas made calls. Dozens of them. Every landlord wanted credit checks, deposits, references. One wanted to meet the kids first. Code for we don't want a crowd like yours. Then out of nowhere, a glimmer of hope arrived in the form of an old friend. Mr. Whitaker, a retired teacher Thomas had known since high school. He owned a small rental property on the edge of town. 2 bedrooms, rough shape but available. Needs fixing up, Whitaker said. But I'll cut the rent if you handle repairs. Thomas visited that same afternoon. The place was old but solid. A yard. A little porch. No neighbors close enough to complain. He said yes before he'd even told Rachel. They moved in 2 weeks later. It wasn't easy. Rachel took extra shifts. Thomas worked through the pain in his arm, fixing broken tiles, repainting walls. The kids slept on mattresses on the floor the first night. But the house felt like a beginning. That weekend they had a picnic in the backyard. Sandwiches, juice boxes, a ball for the kids. Rachel sat beside Thomas on the porch steps, her head on his shoulder. We did this, she said. Together. He kissed the top of her head. We're not done yet. And then came the call. It was from Thomas's old supervisor at the steel mill. We've got a full-time spot opening. Pays better than before. You up for it? Thomas nearly dropped the phone. He hadn't been sure anyone would call him back. I'm in, he said, voice thick. I'm ready. He hung up and told Rachel. She threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. Everything's finally turning, she said. But good news often brings shadows. The next day Caleb came home from school silent. He finally admitted that his birth mom had shown up. At school. Her name was Angela. 2 years ago she had vanished. No calls, no letters. Just gone. Now she was back, asking about custody. Rachel sat with Thomas in stunned silence. She walked away, he said. Left him with nothing. But legally, Rachel said carefully, if she pushes. I won't let her take him. That night Thomas called a lawyer. Money would be tight but he wasn't risking it. I'm not angry for me, he told Rachel. I'm angry for him. He finally feels safe. He finally has a family. And now she wants to show up and act like she deserves him. Rachel touched his hand. We'll fight. Together. Weeks passed in a blur of legal paperwork and emotional storms. Angela demanded visitation. The court ordered mediation. Thomas fought hard, spending money he didn't have, missing work for appointments, holding Caleb through nightmares. At one point Thomas found himself at the kitchen sink, staring out at the dark yard, fists clenched. I'm tired, he whispered. Rachel walked up behind him. Then rest. I've got you. He turned and pulled her close. Promise you're not going anywhere. I'm already home, she said. The final hearing came on a rainy Thursday in May. Thomas wore his best shirt. Rachel came with him holding his hand. Angela was there too, distant and composed. Her lawyer made it sound like Thomas had stolen Caleb. Like love was something you could fake. Then Thomas stood. And he told the court everything. Not just about what she'd done, but what he and Rachel had built. The dinners. The homework. The birthdays. The love. "I'm not perfect," he said. "But I've shown up every day. I'm not just his father, I'm his home." The judge listened quietly. Then gave a decision that broke them both into tears. Full custody awarded to Thomas Bell. Visitation allowed, but only under supervision. Outside the courthouse, Thomas broke down. Rachel held him. "We're still here," she said. "We're still us." The house creaked like old bones in summer heat. It wasn't much, paint chipped at the edges, floorboards that groaned under small feet, but it was theirs. 3 months after the custody hearing, life had finally settled. Thomas worked full-time again, his body stiff in the mornings but strong enough to keep going. Rachel managed both the boutique and the household with practiced grace. The kids were thriving. Caleb finally smiled more than he frowned, little June's lungs clear now, and the twins had taken to calling Thomas Dad without thinking about it. But something had shifted. Not a bad thing. Something deeper. Rachel had started leaving small hints. Recipes she bookmarked, photos of fixer-upper houses on her phone. One night she showed Thomas a sketch the kids had drawn at school. A tall, clumsy-looking house with too many windows and hearts above it. "This is what they think home looks like," she said, smiling. Thomas looked at the drawing for a long time. Then said, "Maybe it's time we build one." The idea started small. A house just for them. Modest, maybe on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Just something that belonged to all of them. Rachel laughed at first. "You've got your job back, not a winning lottery ticket." But Thomas had been quietly saving from side work. He'd cut corners, skipped lunches, done odd jobs at night. "I've got $6,000, he said one morning. She blinked. "What?" "And I know a guy at the credit union. Says with your income, my job, and a stable record, we might qualify for a first-time buyer's plan." It didn't seem real until they stood on a patch of wild grass overlooking an unfinished frame of a small home. 2 bedrooms, expandable, just outside town. The contractor said if they put in sweat equity he could cut the price even lower. They signed the papers with trembling hands. That fall they worked late into evenings, painting, installing fixtures, hauling lumber. The kids helped where they could. Neighbors brought sandwiches. The local church pitched in with furniture and a fridge. Even Mr. Whitaker showed up with an old couch and a bag of tools. "Not much," he said. "But it's solid." That night, Thomas sat on the new porch, calloused hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. Rachel came out with a blanket and slid beside him. "You know," she said, "you saved us." He shook his head. "You gave me something to save." They sat in silence, watching stars blink into the sky. 2 weeks before move-in, the past came knocking one last time. Angela showed up at the job site. He didn't yell. Didn't threaten. Just stood there. "I'm not here to fight," she said. "I saw the pictures Caleb drew in school. That house. It had your name on the mailbox." Thomas said nothing. "I messed up," she admitted. "And I still don't know what kind of mother I am. But I see now what he has with you." He waited. "I just wanted to say, thank you. For being the kind of man he needed." She left quietly and he never saw her again. The move-in day came with the first snow. There were no speeches. No ceremony. Just boxes, laughter, and a key that turned in a door made entirely by love and calloused hands. That night, with sleeping bags on the floor and take-out pizza boxes stacked high, Rachel pulled something from her pocket. A small, wrapped box. Thomas opened it slowly. Inside was a ring. Simple. Silver. Worn smooth like river stone. "I was going to wait," she whispered. "But then I thought, we already made the biggest promises without saying a word. This is just the part where we make it official." Thomas choked back tears. He slipped it on. "You're already my wife in every way that matters." A year passed. Then another. Their story made quiet rounds. Small-town whispers turned into an article in the local paper, then a video from a regional news station. They didn't ask for attention. But it found them. And one evening Thomas got a letter. This time from someone he'd never met. The return address read, Williams Family Foundation. Inside was a handwritten note. We saw the story of how your kindness created a home and we'd like to pay it forward. Enclosed is a grant to support families like yours who are building futures from scratch. A check for $25,000 was folded inside. Thomas showed it to Rachel with shaking hands. They didn't scream. They didn't jump. They cried. Then they made plans. A proper bedroom for each kid, a second-hand truck, and donations to the shelter that had helped Rachel when she had nowhere else to go. Years later, Caleb would write an essay for school. My dad didn't give me life. He gave me a life worth living. He opened his door when he had nothing left, and somehow that became everything. Final scene. Thomas sat on the same porch, now finished with white railings and hanging lights. The air smelled like cut grass and wildflowers. Rachel joined him with 2 mugs. Still feels like a dream sometimes, she said. Thomas nodded. It was a hard road, but worth every step. He looked out at the yard, kids laughing, the sun setting behind their home. Funny, he said. I thought I lost everything the day I got hurt. Rachel leaned into him. And it turned out to be the day you gained everything.